This is the Goal Talk Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 15 of the Goal Talk Podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with number one most influential PPC expert, Mark Irvin, to discuss the state of search and kind of updates on what's going on in the world, how things are changing, how people can start to ramp up their accounts again and signals that they should look for. It's a really great episode. We go through a lot of different PPC recovery strategies, tips for marketers during reactivation, both for search and on social. So sit tight. It's a really great episode. I hope you enjoy it. As always, make sure you're following along on Twitter at Goal Talk Podcast so that we can take your requests and answer questions there. And without further ado, please sit tight for the episode with Mark.
Hello, Mark. Welcome back to the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me back. It's been a month, but it feels like it's been a year.
I agree. I feel like COVID-19 time travels slower and faster in different senses.
And in a way, what a great time to be doing podcasts. I know that there's a YouTube audience that sees the video of all of this, but right now I have the haircut and face for a podcast. So very excited.
I mean, I agree with that. Everything's been closed. So podcasts are really helpful right now. But today I wanted to have you back on the podcast because, the state of advertising, the state of businesses, and this kind of the state of the world has changed over the past month. So I thought it might be worth revisiting the state of marketing and advertising during COVID-19 and kind of talking through, as plans to reopen certain businesses and the topic of reactivating accounts comes into play for agencies and for marketers and for small businesses. Thought it might be worthwhile for us to have a conversation about what that might look like and how businesses can approach that.
Yeah, no, it's of course been very interesting, and we had a podcast back in the early days of all of this, back in April, and a lot of us, like even we, were focused on, okay, how do I go about solving the problem of this world in which half of humanity is under this kind of stay-at-home order, and which like my business might not be operating in any of the same ways, and the world isn't operating in the same ways. As we in the past month or month and a half at this point, like things have changed even to what they were back in the day. There's been a number of things in terms of reopening, in terms of stay-at-home orders being relaxed, in terms of like what the future for both your business and for marketing, and particularly for paid search marketing, have changed a lot over the last couple of months. And you know, this is I am much more relaxed in this podcast than I was a month ago, because we're already seeing a lot of the things bounce back, and that's really positive. We're seeing a lot of people who may have struggled with advertising during the early days actually beginning to pick up their stride. The global stat that I use when I look at all of this is that the beginning of April was, of course, very challenging, and we saw a large decline in terms of performance online and in businesses. The end of April ended at about 89% of the conversion volume that a customer would generally see, when you compare that back to like February. So things are improving. It's still going to be a challenge. It's not going to be a flick a light switch and COVID is now over, or the effects of this pandemic and a consequent likely recession is going to be genuine. But the good thing is that at the end of the day, people are still going online, they still have needs, they're still searching for those needs, and they're still purchasing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I as well am much more relaxed in this episode than I was in the one a month ago. But even in everyday life, I'm seeing people behavior kind of go back to how it was pre-COVID. And that's, not to say that our behavior in terms of where we're going and, seeing other people in mask wear and stuff like that. I'm talking about consumer behavior and, people are still buying things that they need and, whether it be food or, interaction with restaurants, buying things from takeout, getting things from local grocery stores. People are still, having work done on their house, buying things for home, things like that. So it feels reassuring to see that people are still engaging in like purchase activity in a similar way.
Yeah, purchase activity, and it's also just a different conversation. Back in the earliest days, we were all looking for toilet paper because we were all going to run out in the next day or two.
Yeah.
And then like in April, we had plans of like, here's how I'm going to get through the week. Now we're seeing, okay, I'm making plans for, what does my fall look like at this point? I'm now going to be working from home for months, likely. So does that mean that I need to invest in table, chairs, desk, printer, that kinds of elements for my own self? Like we're thinking months out in terms of our purchase behavior, as opposed to a lot of the changes that we had in the first bit of this when we thought it might be days or weeks.
Yeah, and I think that that's a big aspect of it was the uncertainty in the beginning really was pretty paralyzing for people. And I think now that we are entering into this realm where we kind of have an idea of what it might look like in a couple weeks, we'll still be in a similar place, we'll still be working from home. It gives people that assurance that, you know, they'll be able to create a new normal or create a new routine, kind of continue on in what they've developed as their new pattern.
Yeah, certainly.
So one thing I wanted to talk about, specifically at this point that we're at now, it is May 21st. We're both in Massachusetts. And for us, earlier this week, we heard from our governor about new plans to reopen certain things in phases. So, for our state in particular, it's, phase one, certain non-essential businesses reopen in a few weeks. Other businesses are allowed to open, and it's all kind of based on data. And as things progress, how we're able to keep up with that. And I know that there are certain states that have mostly reopened or taken home their stay-at-home orders, taken out their stay-at-home orders. I wanted to kind of discuss how those changes specifically might impact search and how search changes specifically, might change in the upcoming month or so.
Yeah. So a lot to unpack in that. And like you mentioned, the US is a collection of 50 individual states with individual laws. And then take that internationally in Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, all of those all working on a slightly different calendar here, right? Broadly, the themes are very similar. People are like stay at home orders are being relaxed or removed, and businesses are going to open in some kind of like reduced contact, minimum capacity um, phrase for ramped up. A lot of these government's plans have specific dates assigned to them, which is really useful for us as marketers and as businesses to plan how people are going to go about re-engaging with this. What I can say is like, hey, a month ago, one of the things I talked about a lot was um, this was top of mind. Coronavirus was the number one search topic on Google. It outweighed Amazon, it outweighed Facebook, it outweighed the weather, politics, everything. People are still searching for coronavirus. There's still a lot of interest in how people go about searching for this. That COVID term and that search term is now a lot less popular than it was. So people are more comfortable with this. It means the fact that people are searching for it less. It's still out there. People are still searching for it way more than it's still a very popular search term, but it's way less popular. It's showing up in far fewer search queries than it was a month ago. People are resuming more normal search behaviors. Um, that said, people are still even if stay-at-home orders are being removed, people are still staying home as the default a whole lot more. And so one tool that you can go in because I'm not going to be able to go into every area, region of the world, and these all have different calendars and we all have different regionalities to ours. If you go into Google, the mobility reports, they specifically are tracking how people are staying at home, and they're using your phone data, and your location data to determine like how frequently people are staying at home versus going to parks or to retail or the workplaces or where have you. And we're seeing the fact that even as these states relax their stay-at-home orders, in the early days of COVID, I'll use Massachusetts, we were spending 65% less time outside of our homes. Now, as the governor here is beginning to relax those orders and as the weather becomes nicer and all of that stuff, we're spending 55% less time in our homes, or 55% more time in our homes to the benchmark. Now, that does mean like, hey, we are more mobile and that mobile search traffic, like we're becoming more on our phones than we were a couple of months ago. But still, a lot of that search traffic is more desktop focus. It's going to be a slow ramp up before, even if your business can open and it's business as normal as the government defines it, people are going to behave differently. And this is going to be a trend that we're going to see evolve over months and not necessarily flick on a certain date. What's really interesting and the opportunity that a lot of businesses have with this now that they have a plan for when their business can reopen and to how many people they can have on in their business on a given date, that gives us a whole lot of opportunity to plan our marketing leading up towards that. So the example I'll use is like a gym. In Massachusetts, for instance, their gyms and those kinds of services are reopening in our phase three, which is scheduled, I believe, sometime like June 28th or something. Like it's in late June. Um, and so having that date, we know that that means that people can begin to become customers on that day for us. But it's worth noting that, like, on day one, I can't just open the doors to my gym and people are going to know I exist and come in and sell and become customers on day one. Opening that door isn't going to do a whole lot for you. Restaurants know this all too well. Opening that door on day one, you might not get, you're not going to get a whole lot of foot traffic necessarily. So, knowing that you have that date to begin to get people interested in you, how do you market yourself up to that date so that you have people know that you're reopening in a week, 2 weeks? How do you have people engage with you in your email campaigns? How do you get people who are currently searching for gyms and when they're going to reopen and what kind of specials and deals and are looking for competitors so that on day one they can go to the gym and finally get that workout in? How do you get them to choose you in advance of becoming a customer? A lot of the opportunity that we have now is okay, we can turn on our campaigns on knowing that it might take a week or two to get people in that flow, to get people familiar with us. And we have the data to know specifically how long that's going to take for us as well, knowing our business. If we want to go back into Google Analytics or Google Ads and see a conversion time lag report, we can see how long it takes between someone first searching for our business, seeing our ads, and clicking and converting. So this gives us a whole time frame of like, okay, I might be surprised that it takes 2 weeks to pick out a dentist or something like that. I might be surprised to discover that there's a lot of research that goes into this. What I've never done is I've never gone online, done a search, clicked on an ad, converted, and become a customer with complete confidence right there. And most people don't have that kind of relationship. That there is still some genuine marketing and getting people in the funnel to re-engage them and sell them in the days leading up to them becoming a customer. And so that's how a lot of businesses are going to have to begin to plan their reopening is like, yes, you've got a whole lot of operational changes in terms of how you open up your doors, but to get people in those doors, that's similarly going to take some time to engage and specifically market to them.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that does come from, once you've opened those doors, there are a lot of activities, as you stated, to, expect, and a lot of time to expect people to get kind of re-engage and get back into memberships and programs and things like that. But I think that there are, outside of BBC, if there's not budget that's wanted to be spent beforehand, there are a lot of different opportunities for marketing strategies to help promote reopening and to promote deals. Like, this is a time to start thinking, maybe it's buy 3 classes, get 2 free to continue with your gym example, or, just a lot of ways to kind of re-engage people and make them aware of reopening, outside of these channels. So things like social media, email newsletters, direct mailers, if, you're a local business, something, that can really just let people know. Cause I think the more you make people aware beforehand, the most well-equipped you are to, re-engage people more quickly once you do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a really interesting time because you've watched a lot of places that, are convinced that they're not an online business begin to build an online strategy. So can that gym create like a 14-day uh, ramp up couch to 5K program, at home workout program, cut like have some kind of live stream of one personal trainer, which like spoilers, you can record in advance and then just play that every day. Um, can you begin to engage with your audience before they become your customer in store again? And even if you're just asking them for an email or a phone number, what you do in terms of engaging those people who are searching for you today and exposing your brand to them, if they engage with you in any of those ways, even if it's not specifically going to your site and filling out a form that they're going to pay you money at a date in the future, but like if you have their email, their phone, they're engaging with you on social, anything along those lines, that's going to significantly impact the likelihood that they actually become a customer down the road. I've learned a lot about different brands during this point in time when I'm not spending all my time out at bars or restaurants or traveling or something like that. That like now a lot of those subscription boxes or what I'm now doing online, that's changing the preference that I have for a lot of products too. I learned how to make coffee, so I'm not going to have to go to Dunks every day. It's wild.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one thing too. I mean, there was an extended period of time where some places weren't open for coffee. So we, our preferences change as we determine, what we're able to do on our own and what we're not. I mean, cooking is one thing. I had never done one of those subscription boxes with the fresh products, and I did. I did a couple weeks of HelloFresh, and I thought it was great. I loved it. I thought it was a really good opportunity to make things that weren't, the normal things that I make every week, because I'm now eating every meal at home. It was a good way to kind of break out of the routine of the different recipes that I kind of already have, and still kind of be healthy and not waste. And I thought that it was great. So as we're kind of learning new things and discovering new products that help us um, in these times, I think it's a really good opportunity to, like you said, kind of pivot your offering to better cater to these people so that when things do reopen or you're able to kind of offer your baseline of what you were offering before COVID-19, you one have diversified, but you've also gotten this new group of people that, might not have been
Exactly.
interested in your product or service beforehand. And now they're kind of within your realm.
Yeah, exactly. So like COVID, for instance, takes your old personas and it throws all of them out the door for new ones.
Yeah.
By all definitions, you and I are the city dwelling millennials who would never cook a meal in our lives. And here we are. Now we have subscription boxes for these like meal services because cooking is now the most exciting part of our days.
Yeah.
So that shifts two things for us. It specifically shifts a now we're these new consumers, these new customers for these kinds of like gonna have to buy a nicer coffee Chemex program and like see I know what that means now. Um, I now have like nicer coffee filters and I have an opinion on all this. So like now I'm a customer of that. But now is Dunks going to have to rethink their existing persona of the city dweller that spends every dollar at Dunks and goes to coffee twice a day and spends $7 a day? Um, no, although I do miss it. They could win me back. They could win me back really easy. Every time I talk about them, they could win me back very, very easily, and that's
Inadvertently
going to
start
take work.
drooling.
Yeah, exactly. Like the how do and I guess that's a good pivot. Like, hey, now that you're back and reopening, your loyal customers from beforehand, they might not still be. You have to think about how do you re-engage your loyal customers first. Do you use a customer match list, and get out your ads specifically just protect your brand from your competitors, where like brand preference dissolves within 8 weeks. I could just as easily go be a Starbucks person if a Starbucks opened near me first. I could just as all go change that preference to what my favorite bar, what my favorite restaurant is right now, depending on who opens and can satisfy that need for me. So there's going to be a lot of thought in terms of how you re-engage with your existing customers and your existing personas as well, knowing the fact that like we're all going to come out of quarantine with a different perspective than we went in.
Right. And I think an interesting thing to think about there, along the coffee and restaurant and food consumption line is, we have our team is developing a plan to reopen our offices, right? And in some kind of capacity, I don't think it'll be soon, but I think that there's a point where restaurants will be allowed to open before some offices will. So then there are restaurants that are located in super urban areas that, have to rethink strategies of, takeout and how they partner with delivery services and how they market, because, no longer can they 100% rely on office crowds or, walk into work or lunch people. And I think it's an interesting time. It's scary, but it's an interesting time because personas do just completely vanish. And you kind of have to think, one, how you're going to re-engage your customers that you've had or those that you already have in your database. And two, how you're going to extend that to reach a new type of consumer that maybe you weren't interacting with before.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like even beyond that restaurant space, even just the fact of the office, like what's going to be in our office when we get back? Are we going to have a floor plan that size? Are we going to be buying tables and desks and chairs and office equipment to that volume as one order, or are you and I going to go about at some point in time buying a printer for our own home offices? All of a sudden, this consumer market who is working from home, spending a whole lot more time at home, I need a whole lot more things in my house if I'm spending all of my time here that I might have previously like used the office printer or um, you know, eaten food in the office. Like behaviors are going to be different, and how you think about these new personas whom are not necessarily traveling an hour to work every day, aren't necessarily spending all that time on mobile, aren't necessarily um, like auto altogether. Like commutes are not going to exist for a lot of people moving forward. And if they do, it's going to ramp up slowly. So there's going to be a whole lot of changes in terms of how you think about your new persona post 2020.
Yeah, and I think with auto specifically, it's an interesting example because I have multiple friends who have lived in the city for years and have just recently, over the last couple of months, decided that they're either going to move a little bit further outside of the city, take get some more space for less rent money, um, and they feel okay doing that because right now it's not like they're missing anything in the city, but at the same time now they're suddenly in need of a car and they're at a point where, do we lease, do we buy, and they're in the market for vehicles where there are some people who already live outside of the city who aren't going to be commuting in. So it's an interesting exchange and a very worthwhile conversation to talk about, how these businesses are going to have to rethink their customers, their personas, even, as they diversify their offer, they're going to have to start thinking about their value propositions as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And trust me, that hurts deep as one of those millennials who moved to the city because he wanted to be near all the stuff that would be open.
Right.
Now I'm spending a whole lot of money on an apartment that is small, near nothing that is open.
Right.
Um, but that, like, hey, that certainly impacts marketers' decisions whom previously relied on getting in front of that office worker, that professional audience, that idea that everyone who was in Manhattan or that the people who would go and search and buy this product were working in Manhattan. Well, now specifically, we see the fact that people, those professionals, are still working. They're working from their homes, and that audience isn't in that island in Manhattan from 9 to 5, but it's in that house in New Jersey or in Connecticut. And so now is your paid search campaign reaching that professional audience when they're not in these like hub spots of work. You have to think about, as people become remote, your audience becomes less local and potentially more international, even, um, where people begin to work remotely. So the stakeholder for making this purchase could be split among different stakeholders in different states or in different cities, and it's very different than the expectation that I'm going to geo-target my campaign to downtown Boston or the financial district or to San Francisco or to the Bay Area. Um, Now people are out, particularly a lot of these stakeholders are homeowners out in the suburbs.
And as those homeowners are out in the suburbs and things start reopening, maybe they're looking for places back where they are now, but maybe they still want to interact with those places that they love. Um, Christina Simonson, who's been on the podcast, loves Sweetgreen. We'll get Sweetgreen for lunch every single day and absolutely love it. And
Mm.
she's multiple times told me she just can't wait to have another Sweetgreen salad. And so, now as there's not Sweetgreen options where she is, maybe now we start thinking about longer delivery radiuses, or how do we get our loyal customer base to interact with us again? Goes back to that
I've
gym example.
I've always made fun of myself for buying a $15 salad, but even though I can now make a $15 salad for free, I miss a $15 salad so bad,
Yeah.
and I don't know why.
Well,
Um,
there's some inexplicable thing about not only Sweetgreen, but when you can walk up and in 5 minutes get a salad and not have to clean anything up, not have to have excess, ingredients that just sit in your fridge for a few days. You get access to all these things that you would never like buy and have in your fridge. There's something about it.
yeah, it's a special sensation.
Yeah. Um, so another thing I wanted to talk about is some signals that advertisers can look out for as they determine whether or not it's time to increase budgets in their paid campaigns. So as things start to reopen, maybe advertisers want to start looking over their campaigns and seeing, hey, you know, is there a case for me to start ramping up my PPC spend? Is there, is there a valid cause for me to start putting budget behind this again? Um, do you have tips or insights on specific signals that they can look out for?
So there's a whole lot that we can begin to track once we start talking about signals that there's market feasibility, right? And of course, you know your business better than everyone else. You know when you're going to be reopening, you know when you can take customers, all of that. And a lot of that is going to be a benchmark for, okay, that's the latest that you can begin to market, right? If you want customers on day one, you need to be marketing before day one. Um, but broadly, as you go about doing this and you go about like increasing your budget, there's certainly you can track the coronavirus Google Search Trends Hub. has a whole lot of the trends that are dominating the SERP as it relates to these services. In the early days, I mentioned that that was primarily dominated with like questions around like COVID-19, its spread, um, how governments are reacting to it. Now it's beginning to track more in that phrase of like open or near me or plans to reopen. So like in Colorado, for instance, you can see like the interest for salons near me begin to, it has a U shape towards it that once people assumed that they were going to be closed, it closed. As governors and as politicians begin to announce plans to reopen these businesses, there's leading search traffic towards that if you weren't available at 11 a.m. on a Monday, you missed Governor Baker's speech about when things were going to reopen. So of course what you did is you went to Google and you started searching for that. And because politicians can't speak plainly about anything, you have specific questions about specific businesses. And then because those are the dates that those businesses can begin to open, like when is Sweet Green specifically going to open, might be a completely different date than the date that the government allows it to open. So there's a whole lot of search terms about when these are going to be reopening up. And you can see that in Google Trends or in the Google Trends Corona Search Hub specifically, broadly as it guides towards like businesses and the decisions that you make in your paid search campaigns. We're seeing a lot of success in terms of smart bidding during this time. So it might be something that you were very hesitant to let go of your bidding in a pre-COVID world, that you knew your business and the trends that shifted your industry were slow and things that you could go manually account for. As things like the share of people's mobility and the share of your mobile traffic and these kinds of search trends begin to shift in slow, almost unmeasurable ways unless you're specifically looking for them. Google Smart Bidding specifically does track that, and is what I'm seeing is it's outperforming most advertisers as they ramp up. And so things like maximize conversions can specifically guide customers, guide those bidding algorithms using real-time data as it sees that like, okay, the search traffic this week is different than the week prior, and it's beginning to outperform manual bidding in a lot of those areas. During this COVID world, for instance, I'm seeing about a 3% higher conversion rate from the customers who are using that smart bidding solution as opposed to trying to do all of this manually. And so that begins to A, influence your bidding decisions directly, B, gives you more time to focus on those creative decisions as you rethink your persona and the messaging that you need to get out there. And C, it allows you to begin to think more strategically about who that audience is, where they are, and how you're going to go about creating that lead path for that person who's searching to become a customer at a future date.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I think that there are a lot of resources, both, on the WordStream site, as well as just online in general for automatic bidding and, different scripts that you can run. But, if you want to learn more about automatic bidding and different strategies there, make sure to, do some research. I think, especially if it's your first time interacting with them, it's really nice to kind of read up on those beforehand. But yeah, I think that's really powerful. And I think, um, you know, as we kind of look to determine, how things are going to change for us specifically, I think that that's pretty powerful. So one more thing I wanted to talk about, um, we've discussed reactivating on search. I've heard you talk a bit about other channels and other ways that you can um, shift your focus during this time. As we talk through reactivating on Google and Microsoft advertising, I want to talk about how we can subsequently shift our advertising on other channels, Facebook, Instagram, display, YouTube, things like that.
Yeah, so broadly, a challenge that WordStream had noticed in the early days of COVID is that, hey, as people looked to cut back on their advertising, what they did is they went back to what they were most comfortable with. And for most of our advertisers, that was Google search. So a lot of people whom recently started on Bing or Facebook or Instagram or YouTube got very in all of this, all of these like test budgets kind of were immediately shelved and they went back to what they were comfortable with. What's really frustrating about that is those areas in Bing and Facebook and YouTube are specifically the ones that are thriving the most during this COVID world. Like, again, we're spending less time on our phones, we're spending more time on these Windows powered devices, means that we're using Bing a whole lot more, even if unintentionally. Um, on Facebook, Facebook is honestly having a little bit of a renaissance, particularly in North America and Europe. You track Facebook released their quarterly reports at the end of April, and for the first time in 2, 3 years, they were getting an increase of monthly active users from both North America and from Europe. And so whereas a lot of Facebook's growth has been in recent years has been in the APAC market, they're now getting a whole lot of Europeans, a lot of people who are stuck at home looking to connect with people online. And Facebook, even if they had previously shunned Facebook or not been active on Facebook, um, we're re-engaging with that because that's how we're keeping ourselves social. And it's worth noting that that's all people across a number of different ages, demographics, and professional attitudes. I'm a professional. I'm on search, I'm on LinkedIn, I do all of these professional things. I also have an Instagram account. And because time is a construct and all of these days blur into one and time means nothing anymore, I don't necessarily turn off my work mind at 5 o'clock, and then when I go and I sit down and I scroll through Instagram, stop thinking about work immediately. I
Right.
still do get targeted Instagram ads for things in the search industry or for things that are very like professionally driven services. And you know, I read them, I see those ads, and that has influenced some decisions that I've made in terms of the things that we've purchased for WordStream in the past. And I know that that's not, I pray that that is not a unique thing that I do. There's a whole lot of professionals who are people and are on social because that's how they're engaging with their audience. So your audience is now more likely, not less likely, to be across platforms, including um, Facebook, Instagram, including YouTube, including Twitter, all of your social networks. They're quite frankly more important. And as we talk about how people go about verifying that your business is still open or that you've got a reopening plan, like I'm looking towards, I'm not necessarily doing a search for when my barber reopens or when a hotel opens. I'm expecting them to be posting on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and I actually start my search for a lot of those services on social first. So even if you're not, making a big grand play where you're doing a branding play and getting in front of thousands of new customers, a lot of your existing loyal customers are specifically going to your social, and if they see that you haven't posted anything and you have no strategy, social strategy, I'm going to assume that you're still closed. And that's kind of the assumption that you have to break during this period of time.
Yeah. I think that's directly on. I mean, I'm, like you said, I'm also professional. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm doing all these things, but our lines of when work ends and when downtime begins is so much more blurred that, I mean, I made a professional purchase when I woke up this morning. I was scrolling through Facebook actually, and I saw an ad, and I had been meaning to do it and I hadn't. And I saw this ad and it, offered a deal, and I was like, I might as well just do this now. And it was like 6:30 in the morning. Um, so it's just one of those things that, you know, the lines really aren't there as much as they were before when we had commutes to kind of make that definition between work time and home time. And I think,
Right.
like you said, turning to social for these things is increasingly important.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. It's weird, like I've never thought I'd miss a commute or something to add that differentiation in,
Yeah.
but it's hard to turn off the fact that like for a period of time I'm Mark Irvin, most influential paid search person, director of partnerships at WordStream, and then another point in time I'm Mark Irvin, I'm 30 and I really miss my salad and my Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah, exactly. Um, I mean, along the same lines, I think not only just with social, but one way that I'm verifying if businesses are open or if they have, curbside or takeout options is I'm going onto maps. I use Google Maps and I look up a location and I expect that they've updated their listing to include, updated hours, days that they're not open, um, any, curbside pickup availability, things that in the past I just assumed that, certain places would be open. I could walk in, get my stuff and leave. But, as there are different, I talk about this a lot. I'm a really bad millennial in that I don't love ordering things online. I'd rather see it and make that decision. It feels more daunting when it's online. It feels like a bigger risk for me for some reason. Um, so sometimes I'll think about things that I need and I'll make note of that. And instead of ordering it online, I'll make a plan to go to a store. And within this current environment, that's not as accessible. But as things start to reopen and that opportunity becomes available, I've caught myself, looking up on Google, like on Google Maps, is this business open? When is this business open on a Tuesday, or has it updated its, preferences? It's interesting to see how our behavior as both consumers and marketers change. Um, but it does help inform our strategy for sure.
And it's really interesting because previously a lot of businesses were very skeptical, hesitant to make those kinds of changes when they had operational changes. They were afraid that Google was going to penalize them for marking themselves as closed or by changing their hours, um, or by changing their descriptions to say that they aren't providing the following services. And in COVID, like Google is specifically instructing people to do that, removing those penalties, but also adding in a whole bunch of attributes for that assumption that they are going to be changing their businesses. Earlier this past week, Google released the ability for retailers to offer curbside services or to specifically denote whether or not they had opened for traditional retail services. Whereas, of course, like in the past, we assumed if you weren't open, if your doors weren't open, you weren't open, and that business should be marked as closed. Whereas now Google is specifically encouraging people that they will boost your rankings if you provide these attributes.
Yeah, absolutely. The next thing I'm hoping Google will add is wait time for lines.
Well, that's like a real thing. Like I know when all of this starts, of course, there's going to be I want to get my haircut. I want a very large draft beer after all of this. I want to go to a bar and I want to spend time there. So does everyone else, and I know that like we're going to re-enter the period of time where we needed reservations for things and we needed to schedule appointments. And a lot of small businesses might not have that POS or that experience in managing reservations or appointments like this. And so there's a lot of pointing, like Google specifically has a resource hub for restaurants for appointment-based things to get people. It's using its partner resources like Toast and like HubSpot. A lot of those Google partners are offering free trials, extended trials, um, reduced pricing during all of this period of time because so many small businesses, just to stay open, are going to need to address that problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one thing I did hear, I mean, when restaurants reopen, it's going to be reduced capacity. Reservations are going to be needed, as you said. But I hear a lot of the ones in Massachusetts specifically are going to take away bar seats.
I've heard that. I'm not sure if you saw today, actually, Massachusetts announced that they were going to allow people to drink outdoors in patios too, that you could now serve alcohol there, and that they're opening up that. And my immediate reaction, of course, is like, oh, but what about the Puritans? The Puritans would roll over in their grave for that. Like people drinking outdoors, that's just one step closer to complete anarchy. Um, but like we're going to see governments react and change the way that it allows businesses to operate. Massachusetts might allow people to drink outdoors.
That would actually be
They might
insane.
also they might also like allow us to take the MBTA past midnight too. It's going to be insane.
Wow.
Like we're going to be a city.
Well, we're going to be a more hip city.
We're
As
going
one
to
of the
finally
oldest.
Enter the 19th century. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I'm
as
super
one of the
excited.
oldest, we're pretty much stuck in the 18th century.
Yeah, the Puritans still run this place.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how things change. But I think these are a lot of really good tips. Um, awesome insights. I loved, as always, love having you on the podcast. Love talking to you about this stuff. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you think is super important? Any recent changes or strategies that you think small businesses should focus on?
So broadly, I think that's very comfortable, and I say this again, being not to flex again, but to being the most influential person in the industry. Just daily reminder of
I
that.
love the
I
flex.
think it's oh, of course. I think like now more than ever, there I said it. Um, it you need a partner in doing all of this. Unless you're spending 40 hours a week following all these micro trends, and trust me, I spend 40 hours a week following all these micro trends, and they are rapidly outpacing me. We are also entering the middle of the year, and Google is set to announce a whole new number of features. Um, Facebook is, of course, changing itself on the regular basis. Microsoft is announcing a whole lot. I think that this is the perfect time to say, uh, hey, I want to follow what these trends are. I want to reach out. I want to speak to people and understand like what different businesses are doing and reacting towards this. I think that there's so many different reactions that people are having that it's more important than ever to work with a partner that understands what's changing and is following these full time, so that you can begin to adjust, and so that as these trends and these resources open up, you can be among the first to get in and understand it as well.
And I think just the efficiency involved in having a partner and having somebody to kind of take care of the research aspect of it for you is just, it gives you so much time. There's so much to do right now for small
Right.
businesses. It's almost like if you're going to be advertising online, you know, it's a lot of pressure and it's a lot of stress to take on um, as a business. And we always say, everyone can do it, but right now, it's important to have an ally. So I
Yeah, of
definitely
course.
love that advice.
Yeah, self-promotionally, we have a blog post every day. All of it is basically real time in terms of as this news breaks. We have someone who A, understands it, and B, is writing up a summary and a perspective on it. Want to discuss more? You're going to see a whole lot coming from us in the couple of weeks, just in terms of what's coming out of the networks, the platforms, but also we're doing our best to adjust our product to make sure that people are able to capitalize on them early.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a perfect segue because before we closed out this episode, I did just want to take a minute to talk about some upcoming things and things that we're focusing on around COVID and some support that we're offering in reactivating accounts. So, one thing is WordStream Live Online is coming up every year, twice a year. We do WordStream Live in a different city across the US. And our spring event is going to be online. So, as many events and businesses who put on events have shifted to online. We also have, so we're hoping that kind of makes it a little bit more accessible for more people. If you're interested in joining WordStream Live Online, check out the details on our Twitter account. But it's June 9th through 11th, and there's some awesome speakers, some awesome sessions on different strategies. And, me and my team are doing a session on some content strategies that you can employ during this time. So a lot of really great insights there. We do also have a bi-weekly live Q&A town hall type event. Also more details on that on our Twitter account. So highly recommend following that. It's just at WordStream. You'll find a bunch of different insights, resources, things that you can kind of follow along if you need more information. But as always, thank you so much, Mark, for joining us. And we hope to talk to you again soon if you'll join us again.
I mean, I'm always one call away. Hopefully I'll see you sometime before the end of the year as well.
Yes, I hope so. All right. Thank you so much.